everyone, so this is Lizzie from Love From Lizi, and today I'm bringing you the February 2021 10 cards 1 kit, and this is part 1, and there's 5 cards here. So I'm just going to jump straight in, and I'm making my card base, and all I do is split my card lengthways and then score it at 5.5 so that it's a top fold base. I prefer a top fold to the side fold, it's just a personal preference. And I don't repeat showing that for all of the cards, so it's exactly the same. I haven't actually made cards for a very long time, and also making a video, editing, doing the voiceover, so please bear with me while I run through this. But so I've picked a pattern paper that I like, and I've taken the sentiment from the So Lucky kit, and I'm using Emerald Green Hero Arts Shadow Ink here. I really like Hero Arts inks, they're really nice and juicy, and I'm just putting that onto some of the white cardstock that comes in the kit, using my Misty. So I do that a couple of times, and now this is like a favourite of mine. I much prefer to use a ruler, pencil and scissors to cut my pattern paper, because when you use your trimmer you can sort of kill off the rest of the paper. So I use the T-square on the opposite side of the paper to where I put my pencil mark so that it lays nice and flat, and then I use my scissors. Now I'm trying to learn to use left-handed scissors. I've always used what would appear to be right-handed ones, and it is quite an art trying to learn how to line up the blade the other way, and I manage it most cards in this kit. But anyway, so I've cut a piece that is ever so slightly smaller. I do eyeball most of my cutting, I don't tend to measure, and then I've taken the peel-offs here from the kit, and I've used the thinnest of the peel-offs, and I've just decided to sort of accentuate some of the lines in that gingham pattern there, and just simply lay it down and then snip it off once it's stuck down, because I think if you try to snip it beforehand it could be a little bit short or a bit of a faff. And I use all the little pieces up, and any extras that are left over I return to the sheet so that I can use another time. So I've chopped a bit of that out there, so all you got to see was sort of the beginning and the end of me decorating. Now I'm going to use the coordinating dies that come in the So Lucky kit, just to die cut out the sentiments. I use some purple tape just to sort of hold the die in place so that when it runs through my die cutting machine they don't shift. My plates, if I'm honest, could do with replacing. They're a little bit bowed, so the tape just helps keep that in place. And now I'm taking a couple of the little wooden pieces from the kit and just pressing those into that emerald green ink pad just to stain them a little bit. I use 2 of the smaller ones and 1 of the medium sized, and then just use a tape runner on the back of the pattern's paper and try to sort of line it up a bit before I press it down. And I'll be perfectly honest, I didn't get it exactly square, so I've taken the medium sized peel off and run it along the edge. Now this is sort of like a bit of a hack when it comes to peel-offs. They hide a multitude of sins, so if you've got a bit of a snaggly edge, or if you want to make, if you've put your patterned paper slightly lower on the card than you should have done, then you can cover up some of the patterned paper at the bottom and then lay the top peel-off directly on the cardstock and it will balance it more. And I'm just using some multi-medium matte to stick down those little wooden pieces, because you get a really good firm grip on the when it's paper to paper. Obviously any kind of adhesive works, but I do like the multi-medium matte for wooden pieces and sequins as well. I'm a fan of it. And I'm just using some black foam squares. I use black ones throughout these cards because the majority of it is quite strong in colour, and if a little bit of white poked out it would be very stark. So yeah, just removing all the little pieces and then line up where I think I'd like the sentiment to sit. And that is card number 1 almost done. I used some Nouveau glaze over the top of the little wooden pieces, and again when I show this it looks a little bit cloudy, but in the picture that I'm just about to share of it done, they're all nice and dry, so it just gives a little bit of extra pop to those wooden pieces. So that's card 1, and here it is in still shot. Okay, so card 2, I've created my card base, which is the rest of that white, and because I've already started chopping into what would have been the other card base, I just thought I'd continue. And I've selected the little hand-holding coffee stamp from the set, and I'm going to pop that into my MISTI, and I get some anti-static powder. I use the EK Success, but people have bags. It's essentially, I think, cornstarch if you're American, or baby powder works just as well. It's just something that if there's any sort of residue of oil from your fingers or anything else, that it will just get mopped up. And I use Versa Mark, a couple of times on that, and then I use the Golden Crown Love From Lizi embossing powder, and I always heat from the back first so that it's almost semi-melted before I turn it round to the front, because otherwise the embossing powder can get blown away. And here I'm just using my trimmer just to take the white down so that the embossed image is right in the middle. And I've picked one of the patterned papers which looks very much like glitter. It's completely smooth. And then I've taken, this is the gold matte mirror, which is in one of the bundles, the specialty bundles that we released this month. And again, just using my pencil, my T-square ruler, so that I'm not wasting lots of that cardstock. Mark that up and then snip that out, just so that I've got a little mat to sit behind, and that that gold satin works really well, the mat behind the embossing powder. Now, because this is a very busy patterned paper, I've marked on the front where those lines are, but then I just sort of dragged the pencil around the back so that I could do my pencil markings there, a bit easier to see. And I have cut it ever so slightly wider than the card base, because again, it's much easier to trim away than it is to try and line up exactly. So I'm making sure that it's straight. I stick it down on my card base and then just trim off the excess, and then using my tape runner again, pop that heat embossed stamped image onto the gold, and then taking the So Lucky stamps again. And then I also pick an extra little sentiment on this one, which is that good coffee and you exist. And I'm going to heat emboss the sentiment So Lucky. So again, anti-static powder tool, and then the Versa Mark, just to get a really nice good impression. I do that a few times, and then pour over the Golden Crown. And I use a coffee filter, I mean obviously a piece of copier paper, it just makes it so much easier to tip back into the jar so that there's no waste. Heat from the back, and then stamp my little That Good Coffee in and You Exist. And now I've picked some black pinstripe peel-offs out of my kit just to tie in that black ink that I've used on the sentiment. And incidentally, I used Gina K Amalgam ink for the black sentiment. It's a really lovely ink. And yeah, I used, as I say, the thinnest of the pinstripes just to run along the seams of that green, just to give it a little bit of definition, a bit of pop. And then I use, again, the middle-sized, just on the inside on the glitter, just as a little design part. And I stick down one end where I want it to be, and then sort of manoeuvre my other hand with the other end until it's in sort of the spot, and I gradually sort of press down as I go. And then snip off and return any extras onto the sheet, because when you're going around a little topper or something, you know, those little pieces will always come in handy. And so I now use some of the bigger black foam squares to support the little topper icon, and then pop that onto the front of the card. And that one is done. So that was a nice, super quick, easy card to complete. And there's the photo, the photograph of it. And now we're moving into card 3. Now, card 3, I really do like a shaker card. I put sequins in all of my kits so that people have got the facility to do it. And I've picked one of the patterned papers to work with, again, to sort of cover the majority of the front of the card. And then I've chosen the largest of the wreaths that come in the ephemera pack, and then using a pencil I just draw around the inside of where I want that wreath to sit, and use a little craft knife to cut across. And then I cut, I would say about, oh gosh, I'd say about 5 mil, half a centimetre. I'm not sure what that is in American money with inches. Maybe someone can help me out. But I cut a little bit larger, just to give me a bit of movement when it comes to when I'm placing the wreath. And here I'm just using a sticky away thingy. I was given this actually at Junkie Fest. I won a little prize, and it's actually really helpful. It means that I could stick all the way down so that no sequins would tuck behind, and then I can just remove any additional adhesive. And this little bow is also in the ephemera pack, but I wanted to cut away all of the extra whites. And when sort of fussy cutting something out, it's always easier to move the icon that you're cutting around rather than the scissors. And I'm just using a Copic marker. You could use a Sharpie, any sort of black or dark pen, and it just hides that white harshness on the edge. Cut out a little piece of acetate that fits behind the wreath. Had a bit of trouble trying to get that last little piece out and put it in the bin. And then again using my tape runner just to pop some adhesive down and get that piece of acetate onto the back side of the wreath. And here I now just making sure that I've got the wreath the right way up. I've got my big mama roll of foam tape, and I always do this the same way. I make it double thickness so that the sequins have got enough length, width to move. And I fold it whilst it's on the rolls to make sure that the edges all line up. And then if you remove the backer from both sides, it is actually quite flexible if you cut it quite thin. I didn't quite cut it long enough, so I just need to fill that little gap to make sure that sequins haven't got anywhere to escape. And it doesn't need to look pretty, it just needs to plug the hole. So I pop that little piece in, and then I put anti-static powder around the inside to make sure that if there is any sticky that's exposed, it's absorbed so that the sequins don't all stick. And I pour some of the sequins from the kits onto the card base. And I love an overfilled sequin shaker, but you want it to be able to move enough. So yeah, it's a bit of trial and error, unfortunately. And then once I've placed that down, I give it a really good firm press to make sure that there isn't anywhere for a sequin to dive behind. Little bit of tape runner on the back of the bow to pop it onto the wreath. And then I'm using the So Lucky dies, the sentiments themselves, and then cutting out of that matte gold mirror again, and then pop that all out. I have to be very careful with dies, particularly as I'm a bit rusty with card making, that everything gets put back. My craft desk tends to look like a bomb's gone off a little bit when I'm making, and it's the sort of thing that I would lose a die, so it all gets put back. And I'm using the multimedia mat. I squeeze the tube so that there's a bit on the end, and then drag it around to try and cover off all the bits that stick out, the furthest extremities, and then use my tweezers to sort of place the words down. And I mean, if you wanted to, with Lucky and So, because the L is separate and the S and the O are separate, you could lay your die down and then lay these dies within them, because there is a shadow die, so that will keep them in place if you're concerned. So there's the still shot of the shaker. And now we're moving on to card 4. And this one I wanted to use some of the ribbon that came in the kit, so I thought I would be frugal and use up some of the sort of little leftover pieces of patterned paper. And I've combined that with the gold glitter and lined it all up towards the right hand side of the card, and then sort of, me being me, don't like to waste any paper, so I have held it all up to where I would like to have it, and then use the card base again as a template to measure off against and snip it all out. And again, this is a super simple, super quick card, and I'm umming and ahhing about whether or not I leave any green to the right or not, but I did decide against it. And I just used some tape runner with the piece on the far right still not stuck, so that I can lay the gold underneath ever so slightly. And then give that a nice firm press and trim away. Here's me returning to some right-handed scissors because I can't manage the tightness with the left ones yet. I'll get there. And then I stick down the other piece of the patterned paper, and then I use my ATG to hold the ribbon down. And usually I would like to fold the ribbon to give it a nice edge, but on this card, because it was paper, it wouldn't have tucked around very nicely. If it's card and it's thicker, it would have supported it. But so I just gave it sort of blank cuts across the top and the bottom. I've chosen the little coffee cup ephemera piece, and then as I had the black peel-offs on my desk, I just ran one of the thinnest along that gold glitter, and I'm stamping the So Lucky and umming and ahhing here about which colour to go with, and I decided to go with the black, and again I used Gina's black amalgam for this, and die cut them both out. Excuse my head in this, again, sorry I'm a bit rusty. And I have actually recently got a new camera set up now in my new studio, which I'm really pleased with. There's still a few little bits and pieces that need fixing with it, but it's working, it's operational. So the Lucky, I used my tape runner just to pop down, and then I put some foam behind the so that could stand proud a little bit, and ummed and ahed about overlapping, and did slightly over the K. And then I used a wink of Stella. Now this was a bit of a rookie error because I actually used the white wink of Stella instead of my clear. So when it all dried, it didn't look right. So I actually used my sand eraser over the top to get some of that white away, and it's worked out okay. Anyway, on to card number 5, and I think perhaps my favourite of the cards. I've taken the biggest stamp from the stamp set, which is sort of the bird's eye view looking down at coffee and the 4-leaf clover. And I gave that a good stamp, and now I'm using the coordinating die, and it's just a case of lining it up over the top. You can see through them, and then again tape it into place, run that through, and I'm having a little look now because I decided to paper piece this. I've chosen to be a lady's jacket. It could equally be a man, I suppose, but I've picked something that I thought would work as a jacket and something that I thought would work as a scarf. And again, I've left my stamp in my Misty from when I originally stamped, and now I'm just inking up over, the rough area of the jacket to make sure that I've got enough, and then I fussy cut around the jacket. You could use the coordinating dies and sort of snip out the hands and the feet if you wanted to, but I wanted to have that cut right along the inked image. And again, turning the paper is much easier than the scissors. I am getting better, but I'm not perfect. And now on this piece, because what I need is in the middle and I didn't want to waste lots of gold, I taped my paper into the sort of scrap sheet that comes in the Misty, and just inked up the area of the scarf. Give that also a nice little fussy cut around, and you don't have to be too precise with the with this image because there's quite a lot of black. The lines are nice and thick. It is quite forgiving, so if you're new to it, then it's not too tricky a one to start with. And then glue down those little pieces of gold and put some adhesive again on the back, and then just lay it on top. And so if you're not a big fan of colouring, or you're like me, you really enjoy pattern papers, this is ideal. And so here I've now decided I've got my grey card base, and I'm using the emerald green to stamp the So Lucky again. And I do this a few times, and my little man comes in and he jogs me a bit, but it manages to work out, which is good. But I then choose one of the smaller sentiments, and again use the black ink, and it says "Our lives cross paths." So I ink that a couple of times, and with these tiny ones I put a little bit of ink and repeat with the Misty, because I think you can run the risk of pushing too hard and sort of splodging the ink out of the sides. So I've now got my Versa mark again, and I've used the larger of the 2 coffee cups, and I'm just twisting it, and it's difficult to see unfortunately, but I'm just creating sort of a random background using, and now the smaller one, both the coffee cups, and then I've got the tiny 4-leaf clover, and this I did actually stamp off, but to make sure that it came out okay. And then I sort of just filled in those final gaps in the background pattern, and you can see it better in the photograph at the end. But there we go. You can kind of catch it, and then use some just black foam squares behind the stamped piece and pop that on, and that is the card done. I hope you've liked this. I will try to do more, and please let me know which is your favourite. Until next time, bye.